first off, the first main problem with scripts is it almost always strips the conversation of humanity. I think what it really comes down to is when we're trying to memorize, we need to go this question, this question, this question. What happens is you shut off the curiosity to learn the path to go down of what is their actual problem. So I teach, instead of a script, a framework. So a really good example here, if you want to just drop scripts, what I would say is your whole goal in a conversation is to find out one simple thing. If you do this thing right here, I promise you, you'll go make stupid money in any sales type game, which is do everything you can to find the true pain that somebody is running from or the gain that they are pursuing. And if you can clarify that problem, it becomes so incredibly easy to attach that to a solution.
You're listening to the number one real estate podcast in the world. We talk with real estate professionals all across North America about their wins, losses, lessons, stories, help you win in your local market today. My name's Cody from Sharon Street, joined with Vikram Deol of the Real Estate Sales Academy. Man, it's been a couple weeks since I've had the opportunity to even say that, and we're back in the saddle, beginning of the year 2024, and things are rocking for you. Things are rocking for me. What has been like kind of like one highlight that you've seen in the last couple of weeks, and then we're going to intro our guest.
One highlight, man. I don't know. You go first. I got to think about that one.
Back in Medellin, man. I feel like near the end of the year, I like throughout the entire month of December, I was just not in routine, and I think part of it was like we were in a different space, and it was hard to find a routine. It was hard to find. It was like, you're just, when you're traveling, and like, even we're on the beach every day. So I'm like, I feel like I'm on vacation, and
right.
It was just hard to find that rhythm and routine. Is the moment we landed back in Medellin, even a little bit before that, but the moment we landed back in Medellin, I'm like back to, eating healthier, eating cleaner, being in the gym every day, waking up at a decent time, like just getting back into the rhythm and routine, I would say has been the highlight so far for January for me.
Yeah.
How about you?
I feel you. Like it was great to be in the Dominic, but that trip felt long, and it did become long because we stayed like an extra week, but it felt long.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I am ready to get back to my space.
We both got pretty fat too. We both got pretty fat in December.
I got fat in the first half of December. I leaned up the second half. When I saw the podcast,
I know you did.
When I saw the podcast where I was like, God, Cody, I looked at my girlfriend. I'm like, babe, how'd you let me get fat like that? She's like, no, you're healthy. You're sexy. You're beautiful. I'm like, babe, I don't know who's paying you to lie to me, but you can be real with me. And she's like, well, you got a little chunky. And I'm like, yeah, I cut the carbs out, everything. And, I think my highlight for me is, and I shared this on the Real Workspace. I share this on Facebook. I like to be open and vulnerable. The last 3 years have been financially and emotionally and spiritually and confidence wise, like really hard, coming out of like a banner year where you do almost $60 million in sales, thinking you're going to open up a coaching like mindset company and do $1 million the first year, and then getting crushed in your gonads. And then opening a company with your family, and you think like, you're going to get something, and it changes, and then COVID hitting, and going from being, completely debt-free, Range Rover paid off, money in the bank. I could have lived for like 3 or 4 or 5 years. We still had referrals coming in, and I could have done nothing, and I could have chilled on a beach in San Diego with $4,000 a month rent, to going into like $700,000 in debt. And now it's a lot less. I'm having to borrow money to pay off this, to pay off that. And just like, I was always like, it's crazy because even though I was making 6 figures for the last 3 years, it wasn't enough to keep up with the interest of $700,000. And I think like a lot of people, they get tired and desperate, and they start to chase shiny objects, and they're trying to do this and they're trying to do that. But if you stay in your lane, and I always had a mastermind, I always had a coach, I always had people around me like you and Sharon and Bedros and Steve and all these incredible people. And I think for me, like one, I'm finally feeling where I can speak about that journey, because when you're in it, it's hard to speak about it. But now that like I actually see the light, I'm like, okay, I'm down from 700 a year ago to 280 now, right? Okay, and by the next month, I'm going to be at 2 whatever. And the next month, I'm going to be at, right, my credit score went from like a 700. I haven't ever missed a payment since college. And I missed 3 payments last year, right? Like bank is bank is about to call me on a $200,000 private loan that I paid for my OsteoStrong. And I was like, holy fuck, what am I going to do with my, like, I'm like, Dad, what do I do? He's like, son, just keep working. And, I put my nose to the grindstone, like all of December. And, you were there, like I was up at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, and you guys would go to the beach, and I was working on the listing presentation, working on the buyer's presentation, unpacking different frameworks, unpacking things for our clients. And I got it all done. And the minute I got that done, the confidence inside of me like grew so much that like everything shifted. And what I'm telling you guys right now, before we bring on Robby, because Robby's another guy that jams the same language that I do and you do, Cody, like before we bring him on, I'm telling you guys, there is light. And if you can see even a glimmer of it inside of you or somebody else, that means it's in you, and you can change your perspective. You can change your life. You can change your whole dynamic. But you have to believe, even if it's one freaking pixel, if there's one pixel, there's a billion other that are sleeping. And if a kid from Bakersfield with a stupid black shirt on every fucking day can do it, right? That grew up on a farm, you guys can do it too. That grew up in these freaking awesome cities. Maybe you grew up in a shit city like Bakersfield. You can do it. And like, it just takes focus and dedication, and you'd be shocked at what will happen in 90 days.
Yeah, I've seen,
before
we intro Robby and give Robby an opportunity. I've seen the fluctuation of confidence over the last like 18 to 24 months that we've, been, partnering, like, seeing like how far you've come even in the last like 30 to 45 days. Like, I just want to commend you because like you absolutely have put in the work. And, I think that for you, it was seeing your clients win.
Yeah.
That also gave you the confidence in order to keep moving forward and get the listing presentation done and kind of take everything that you did in the past and kind of put it into present. Thanks, now. Yeah, man, it's super awesome. And I think that this is a great opportunity for us to intro Robby because super Robby, pumped. We like Vic said, like we all speak the same language, and this podcast can be a little bit different in the sense of like, we're going to have a dialogue today about what agents need to hear versus what they want to hear. And, Robby, just so you can give context to everyone listening, kind of like talk a little bit about kind of like where you came from, what, like, how long you've been in the real estate business, like why people should listen to you. Just give it like the high level context, and then we can kind of get into a dialogue around like lead conversion, around what agents need to do. We can talk a little bit about like agents that did, 20 deals 2 years ago and are down to one deal, which is like conversations that we're hearing consistently. But set the context for like, who is Robby T?
Yeah. Well, first off, guys, I got a name. It's an honor to be here with you guys. I do a lot of these, and one of the things that drives me nuts about this industry is the superlatives and the fakeness in this game of talking about great and numbers and how many homes I sold. And I think what we need is more vulnerability. So Vikram, thank you a ton, man, for opening up. I think that's so key, and being honest and talking about the tough stuff is what brings people together. So honored to be in the circle today, guys. Missed out on my black shirt memo, but next time I'll make sure to rock this time.
Our assistant to tell you next time.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
We can banter for 30 seconds and you go run and change real quick.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm almost there. It's grayish.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm Robby T. I hail from good old frozen Fargo, North Dakota. I've been in this game North Dakota. Yeah, I can rock the accent. It's really funny. My wife is kind of like Instagram famous for Midwest accents. It's hilarious, but I digress. I started in this game as an ISA, inside sales agent, and essentially what that meant is when I started in this game, I got hired by my good buddy and business partner now, Eric Hatch, to come in and call all the old leads in the database, the stuff that probably, Cody, you're probably getting from a lot of people. And what's so funny about it is everyone talks about how old leads are junk, and they may not say that, but their actions show it, right? They do nothing with it. They don't call it. They don't text it. They literally do nothing with it. It just sits there. And what's so ironic about it is all the data shows leads actually get better with age. It's like wine or whiskey, right? It gets better with age. A PPC lead is on average going to convert at about 640 days down the road.
How many days? Can you say that? Can you say that one more day?
640 days.
Hold on. A PPC lead converts in how? What? One more time, bro.
Yeah, 640 days. And where that came from is we had a real estate team. At our peak, we were selling over 1,000 homes. Our ISA department was 4 people, and the PPC leads, it was our bread and butter. It's what we focus on when we're really in the game. And on average, these things were closing 640 days after registration. And what happens is everybody calls maybe day one and then nothing. So I think the biggest thing, when I got into the game, I like to tell this quick story. I got in and Eric basically said, hey, go call my old PPC leads. There was 2,000 of them, 2,200 Tiger leads. You guys remember those way back in the day?
Oh, yeah. I had Tiger leads. We sold Tiger leads. Great leads. Yep. Great leads. Great people.
Like one of the old school, it was Howard Taggard's company before he created Ylopo with G. But I got 2,000 of those, and I did what nobody else did because I was 20 years old. I was a baby. I had no idea what I was doing. So I started calling through them. And we'll talk a little bit today about my approach and how I learned it. But the long story short of it is I called through 2,000, and it took me about 3 months to work through all those leads along with some others. Well, we ended up closing 40 plus deals from those 2,000. Let's just take the math. That's 2% closing ratio on a lead source that almost everybody's only closing at about half to 1%.
If they're lucky. If they're lucky. That's why they stopped calling them.
Stop calling them. But if you go look at those numbers, if you look at the return on investment, if you invest that, even taking into account the time going into it, it was stupid. But I was doing what nobody else wanted to do, which was pick up the dang phone, get kicked in the face. I think if I were to put all my numbers together, I don't say this to be egotistical, but I think when I was in the game, I was probably the best ISA that's played the game.
Oh man, I wish we would have known each other back in the day.
I know, right? We could have went back and forth.
Well, we could have helped each other too.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and 100% collaborated. What it really came down to was over about 2 years, I made 100,000 phone calls, spoke to 10,000 people, had 1,000 appointments that led to 500-ish closings for
Congratulations.
And thank you. Appreciate it. And really what it came down to is you'll hear my approaches today. Almost everything you've been taught in the Tom Ferry world, almost anywhere about scripts and dialogues, it's all trash.
It's wrong.
Like,
it's all wrong.
Throw it out.
All wrong.
Not good. It's not
all
good.
Wrong. Karate chop down. Like, what the fuck does that even mean?
Exactly. Like NLP, like honestly, a lot of these things, very simply put, like put people at the center of the conversation, ask them questions and believe them, and that's it. Like people overcomplicate this game, and we get structured today.
We're doing a role play today. So I just hired a couple new setters for my company, and we're doing a role play today, and I'm teaching them how to mind map objections. Right. So it's like, hey, you put a circle and you write. So like, because a lot of the problem isn't what to say. It's when they say this, I don't know where to go. So I'm like teaching them the roadmap, right? Because they're blind to the roadmap. And I got this from another sales. I geek out on sales like you do, I'm sure. And I got this from somebody else, and I was like, oh my God, why have I used to do this with my team, but I forgot, right? We forget things. Like we're humans, we forget things, right?
100%.
And we were doing it, and I told my guy that, right, he's only been with me for 10 days, but he's super sharp on it, and he was doing it, and I was like, hey, teach the new girl.
Right.
So he's explaining it to it. I wasn't even listening. They're like, hey, Vic, what'd you think of that? I'm like, it was great. He's like, you're not even paying attention right now. I'm like, yeah, don't worry. If I start talking, I take over. And when they were explaining everything, right, they started to see the processes. And they started to see that everything is just the same. It's all the same objections. It's all the same things. And people overcomplicate. Oh, I don't know what to say. I'm like, yes, you do. You're a human. And when he said he said something, and I want to bring it up because we think we need to say like these perfect statements, but he goes, hey, I apologize. This isn't perfect. I said, okay. And she said, no worries. Disarming statement. Right. So he apologized and she said, no worries. And I said, did you guys just notice that interaction? They're like, they were clueless because it's so ingrained in us consciously to be unconscious.
Yeah.
And like when you guys think that you have to be so polished, I can't say sorry. Oh, I can't be like saying no, everything else. You guys, like that is like old school, like nonsensical BS selling. Everybody wants interaction and connection.
Yeah.
And that's how we do it.
One of the hardest things with scripts right now, and I would love to get both of your opinions on this, because I was training, we were doing some sales training with some of our new setters the other day. And, they often with script, you often ultimately want to go to the next question,
right?
Like you want to see the script like you want to use the script like it's written. And I was doing a role play. We were listening to a call with one of our new guys, Colton, and he one of the second like within a minute he used a consequence question. And I'm like, you have no rapport with this person. I'm like,
whack-a-mole.
You can't whack him over the head. You have no rapport built with this person. Like, you don't like.
Did he get the appointment?
No, he didn't get the appointment.
It had to be pretty
like you need to clarify. And like we explained to him, he's like, oh, I get it now. Because like he was looking at the framework. And this is the hard thing about scripting that a lot of people don't understand. It's like, I can give you a script, but like there's a level of intuition that has to be added into the script. Like, I'm like, you know nothing about this guy's business structure. You know nothing about what they currently do, like for work. Like, we need to clarify and probe. So my question I want to phrase to kind of both you guys is like, what do you think are some of the common mistakes that you see agents that might necessarily be using a script? Maybe they're in the Tom Ferry ecosystem and they're using a script. Maybe they're in another ecosystem and they're using a script. Like, what are some of the common things you see from an inside sales agent perspective, but then from an agent perspective? Because I listen to agent calls.
I think it's the same.
I listen to a lot of high producers agent calls. And I'm like, you guys still are not building relationships with the questions that you're asking. So like, what are some of the common mistakes you're seeing? I'll start with Robby and then we'll move to you, Vic.
Yeah, so I think a couple things. First off, the first main problem with scripts is almost always it strips the conversation of the humanity. I think what it really comes down to is when we're trying to memorize, we need to go this question, this question, this question. What happens is you shut off the curiosity to learn the path to go down of what is their actual problem. So I teach, instead of a script, maybe scaffolding is maybe a better word, or just frankly a framework or questions to be asking. So a really good example here, like if you truly, and if you want to just drop scripts, what I would say is your whole goal in a conversation is to find out one simple thing. If you do this thing right here, I promise you'll go make stupid money in any sales type game, which is do everything you can to find the true pain that somebody is running from, or the gain that they are pursuing. And if you can clarify that problem, it becomes so incredibly easy to attach that to a solution. But what so many of us do is we hear someone say, well, we're thinking about making a move because we want a bigger home, right? Common thing. And what happens is we write down motivation and we check that box off because we've been told in our script, we ask motivation. We write down motivation is getting a bigger home.
LT Mama.
Yeah, trash. It doesn't work. And here's why is what brilliant connectors do. Let's not even call ourselves salespeople. By the way, none of us are in sales, right? None of us.
None of us.
Right? We're in a service industry. The only people in sales, in real estate sales, is builders. They're the only ones selling a product. People always forget this. But what it really comes down to is when somebody says that they want to get a bigger home, what I need to understand is what the hell does that actually mean? So what that really comes down to, I teach really, I think, three things is what I always tell my people to write down. Number one is, if you want to get good, ask the question, what's motivating you to make a move? They'll tell you surface level stuff. If you want to get great, you have to get really good at using the mindset and script of tell me more, which is when someone says they want to get a bigger home, well, help me understand that a little bit better. Ask an open-ended question that gives them permission to keep going. If you want to have your master's degree in this game, you don't just ask, tell me more a few times. What you do is you circle back to the original question and say, well, what else is motivating you? So it's what else? Tell me more. What else are, I think, the two only scripts you need to frankly have. And I think the science behind this, because I geek out about the science, it's funny, Vikram, I actually hate almost all salespeople because they don't understand the mind.
Right.
I love psychology. Like Robert Cialdini is my man, right?
Influence,
people like that.
Persuasion,
all of it. What it really comes down to is tell me more, and using what else works for one simple reason. There's a gap between a human's ability to think and speak. You guys ever heard this? You'll love this stuff. We think at about 1,000 words per minute. So if I ask you a question, Vikram, your brain starts running at about 1,000 words per minute, 750 to 1,000, depending on the brain. The problem is, Vikram, you can only speak at about 150 to 250 words per minute if you speak very, very quickly, like maybe you and I do. So inherently, human beings can only communicate about 20% of the information they're thinking. So what happens is everybody in sales, they hear one answer and they write it down. Oh, got motivation, got timeline, and they don't find out truth. What they find out is surface level answers. And when you operate off of surface level answers, that's not influence, that's guesswork. So the brilliance here of tell me more and what else is you're giving somebody permission to tell you more about their original answer. And by doing so, the answer almost always has so much more depth and so much more meat. So for me, I hate scripts because what happens is it takes that humanity out of the conversation. It takes the ability to go down what matters to them. I think what we had to do is find out what matters to them, what they're running from, what they're running towards. That's my answer.
So I want to, and I want you, Vic, to maybe touch on this and then go back to Robby. I'm going to be the moderator here because, I'm curious. Because I want us to be careful with saying throw scripts out the door, because I've heard people that don't do anything because they say, well, I don't script because I don't want to feel scripted, and therefore I don't practice. I don't role play. I just want to be super careful in our dialogue here, because people hearing this could be like, well, that's why I don't script. That's why I don't practice. That's why I just wing it. So what is the fine balance? So answer the prior question. Why do you think, Vic, why do you think that, people struggle to actually use script? And then it's if they don't use a script, what should they be using?
So I'm gonna ride off of Robby because I agree with him. It's if we don't understand, so there's a thing in our brain called the amygdala, right? I'm NLP, Tony Robbins, I got all these certifications, right? But all their stuff was really good. And I was like, how do we make it better? Because we always should be improving. And so there's a thing in the amygdala that I learned when I was doing my NLP training. The amygdala is the fight or flight response. It's actually the first thing that's built in our brain as a child, because a child has two fears: a fear of loud noises and the fear of falling, right? Because those are both things that can kill them. So if I put a gun next to your ear and I shoot it, you're going to have a fight or flight reaction. You're either going to punch me in the face because you're fighting me, or you're going to run because you're scared for your life. Same thing if I put you at the edge of a cliff, right? Why is skydiving so scary? Because you could die, right? So our internal instinct as a child never leaves us as an adult. I was walking today down the road and there was construction, and I heard one of those little scooters, because we're in Medellin, Colombia. I heard this little scooter pop in my ear and I jumped, and the guy in front of me working just laughed. He's got a wheelbarrow, he's laughing. And I'm like, estoy un gringo, dos el problema. He laughed, right? That's what charismatic people talk to people on the street, right? You can learn to be charismatic. You can learn to be outgoing, right? So I just laughed. We smiled at each other. He said, have a good day. I said, have a good day. The problem is not what you're saying. The problem is you don't understand why you're saying it. You just got something from a guy on stage. You're like, hey, this is great. Let me use it, right? Don't buy a house, date the rate, right? What? Don't marry the house, date the rate. What? Date rape. What? That's what my mom heard. That's what my mom heard, right? And it's that's so stupid. I said that once to my clients years ago, and then I was like, wait, hold on. What did I just say? Marry the house, date the rate. What did that even freaking mean?
Yeah.
And I had to stop and pause myself. I was like, hey guys, I apologize. Last week I said something super stupid to you. Nobody in the world's going to understand, but it sounds good from stage. So the first thing is when it comes to the human mind is our tonality, right? The first thing we hear is tone. And so when we don't have the right tone, we trigger fight or flight. If we use the right tone, curiosity, right? Like Robby was talking about, neutral tone, right? Don't be super excited. I love Expired. I loved online leads. I loved all that stuff, right? You call it Expired. You're like, hey, it's just Vikram here with the local neighborhood expert. I'm so excited to come over. And yeah, if you make a ton of calls and you pound the pavement and you're completely oblivious, like a lot of Tom's coaching does, and I like Tom, but I don't like his sales. I think Tom's way more process oriented and business minded than I am. But I don't think they're sales, because they're people have called me. I'm like, yo, block. Great stuff. But when I would teach my kids, I call my kids my agents, to downswing, Vic, why do we downswing? And I'm like, you know what? I don't actually know. It just said it in the script. And that's when I realized 10 years ago, I was like, holy shit, these scripts suck. And I remember going out with my guy, Justin, and we would order a bottle of scotch at the hotel that nobody was at, close to the office, so I could stumble home. And I would just have them write. I'm like, does that sound good? No. Does that sound good? No. How does that make you feel? It makes you feel drunk, Vic. It's 11 o'clock at night. Can we go home? Not till we finish this. And we rewrote all of our own script. We used a lot of the questions, because I was brand new, but I was when I sold Cutco, when I sold cell phones, right? And I was competing against an iPhone and I had a shit BlackBerry. So the intention is important, right? Your first off is tonality. Your second off is intention. Why are you on the phone? I love talking to people because I know that my product helps them. Do you believe in your back end processes? If you don't, that's going to make you not get on the phone. So does your intention match what you're saying? A lot of people, it doesn't. So I'll finish in a second here. So tonality.
Yeah.
And then the third reason why we don't use scripts is because the script is focused on who? Hey, I'm the number one agent. Hey, I'm just calling you today. Motherfucker, I didn't ask you to call me, right? Like, why are you calling? Where's the curiosity? I'm calling you to tell you that I'm so great. Look at your guys' Instagram post. I love you guys. And I know you're trying and I applaud your efforts. But when you post the just listed and just sold, nobody cares. But when you post something about like the process you followed, you get like 50 comments, not from agents. The only people who comment just listed, just sold, right? So who is the focus on? The focus is on me. If I'm focused on me, right? And you guys, this is 222 episodes. We hardly pitch what we do in our episodes. Why? Because the focus is on you. We care about you, right? Cody runs a great company. I run a great company. We can help you, but we focus on you. Cody and I have got very little business from this because our intention is that we are going to serve the industry at the highest level. What is your intention with your call? Is it to tell the world how great you are? Or is it to tell the world? And you guys, it's landing when somebody like Robby and Cody are like, right, that's listening. And people don't know how to do that because they're so focused on the thing. So instead of calling it a script, let's call it a framework. And that's why like the little bubble mind maps, Cody, that we're doing with our clients, we're doing with your clients, we're doing with like our, my own team, like my own setters and salespeople, like the mind map helps them process. When they say this, I go here. When they say this, I go here. If they say this and it's not the perfect line, I go here. It helps them visualize the process.
Anything you want to add, Robby, to that? Like in regards to like why do you feel like agents are so reluctant to scripting? And I understand it because like we often say we don't like scripts, but like at the end of the day, they still do need to script. Like they need to have a framework, whatever the hell we want to call it.
Let me before we ask Robby, I was working with your guy. I'm not going to say his name just in case he hears it, but I was working with one of your sales guys, and it took me 6 months for him to write his framework up. And I'm like, I would write it for him, and then he wouldn't touch it. I would write it for him, he wouldn't touch it. I wouldn't write it for him, he wouldn't touch it. Then finally, 2 months ago, he wrote it, and this month he's 100K cash collected. His best, he almost beat out like his whole last 9 months in cash collected in 1 month. And I know you've been working with him a lot, but I think it's because he finally has a framework to work off of.
And he'll totally agree with that statement that like it's the.
But why do you think it was so hard? But why do you think because you work with him, we talk to him, we say the same shit to people all day long. Why do you think he had so much reluctancy to build out a structure and a framework?
I honestly don't know. You come back to me on that one. I'm curious to know what Robby. Like,
I got an answer because I talked to him about it.
So I'll chime in on a few things. I first want to hit on what Vic said about the amygdala, which is the general response we all have when we're feeling afraid, which is fight, flight, or another one of that is freeze. Right. That's what humans do. Right. I think what it really comes down to is there is no script to make people feel safe. What makes people feel safe is your intent. This is what you're getting at, Vic, is your intent to serve other human beings at the highest level to make them feel heard, understood, and valued. The problem is there's no script for any of that. It's more like it's like an impromptu play. You have no clue where it's going to go because the problem is that every single conversation, the conversation is different because humans are different. The story is different. And I think why I hate scripts is it becomes all about the script and not about the person. And Vic, that's what I think you were getting at. And that's why I don't like it. Now, do I agree? I'm not at all saying you shouldn't be role playing and practicing. You should be doing that all day long because if you're not doing that, and all day long is maybe a bit of an exaggeration, but
multiple times a week, not once a month.
Doing it, you're practicing on potential clients. And I've always found I'd rather role play with Cody or other human beings so I can get used to asking questions, get used to dealing with conflict, I think is what it really comes down to. But I think here's what my biggest experience. So before I got into real estate, I worked in political campaigns and I worked fields, which means I was the a-hole knocking people's doors, trying to find out who people then planned on voting for and trying to compel them to vote for my candidate. How do you think these conversations went?
Wonderful.
Poorly. Right. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, exactly. They did sometimes, 10% of the time when I was the right
Hot
political
butter,
party.
warm knife. It just melts it so easily.
Exactly. But here's what would happen is I was given a script. This is why, honestly, I think this is why I hated scripts. I was given a script. They said, go out there, ask these questions, and then tell them, here are the top 3 reasons they should vote for our candidate. Just like we do in real estate. Here's the top 3 reasons you should work with me. Here's the things you need to say to get people to work with you. And what I found is when I tried that, literally people pointed guns at me. They told me to fuck off. I'm glad you guys cuss on this because I cuss like a sailor. They told me to fuck off. They told me I'm a piece of shit. I had death threats. Everything you can think of would happen to me. And what's really interesting is I really don't think I'm smart, but I'm smart enough to recognize that strategy was dog shit. So here's what I did. Instead, I took all of it, I threw it out the window, and I said, I'm going to find out, and I'm going to start walking up to the doors. I'm going to do something different. I happened to read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, right? One of the OG self-help books. And habit number 4 is seek first to understand, then be understood. So what I did was I started going up to Vic or to Cody, and I said, hey, I'm out here with blank and blank political party, which already triggered people, but I had to do it just like in sales. We got to say, hey, I'm with blank and blank real estate, whatever the identifier is. And I said, I'm out here today, and I just wanted to know, Cody, what matters to you, the selection? And you know what people did? Almost always gave me some bullcrap, like, I don't know. I don't really care about politics. They deflect. They give you some objection.
But they didn't shoot you. They weren't threatening you at this point anymore.
So they were already disarmed. Here's the number one rule that we need to understand is we trigger people as salespeople. We trigger people.
Hey, how you doing today? Hey, remember we talked 6 months ago? I don't remember what I ate last night for dinner.
100%. Even if you're Jesus, the salesperson, you're going to trigger people because people don't want to be sold. They're afraid of it. It's that amygdala in us that's trying to protect us, fight, flight, or freeze. So here's what I did was when people said, well, I don't really know. I don't really care about politics. And I'd slow it down, like, okay, Cody, I appreciate that. But help me understand, what are a few things that really matter to you this year when it comes to voting? And here's what would always happen when I ask that question, the same question again. Cody would say something like, well, I don't know, schools, getting smaller classroom sizes. Okay, cool. Tell me about that. Why is that important to you? And it's funny because there's people in sales that say don't use why. Those people are idiots and never actually done the game. They're liars. Now, if I say why, like an A, well, of course, don't use it. But if I say
it's your intention behind why you're asking. It's your intention behind why you're asking. It's when you ask it. It's where you, right? Like that's the science and the art blending by practicing. Yeah. You can't just say, why are you doing that? Because then you're an asshole. But if you're like, yeah. So I'm curious, like why are schools important to you, Robby? Now your tonality is empathetic and you're curious, and now people want to listen to you. They're like, well, because I have kids.
I have a super curious question I want to ask because I want to pose it to both of you here because right now in the marketplace, I hear so many people being like, I tried the ISA thing in the past, and you both have had ISAs, and you Robby,
I was the ISA, bro.
Yeah, Vic.
In every company I've ever owned, I was the ISA. That's how it should start.
Why do you think that? Because an ISA's job is in order to create a conversation for the agent. Really, at the end of the day, that's the ISA's job. Like, why do you feel like so many agents feel like ISAs don't work? Yeah, go for it, Robby. Like, what? Like,
you're the guest.
You've been an ISA.
So 2 things. I think very first is because they're trying to squeeze water out of a rock, meaning they hire people that they're willing to pay almost nothing for, and they expect it to change everything. That's the number one problem is they have these unrealistic ideas of what they're going to get without putting the work in, training them, getting them training coach, any of it. So that I think is probably the first big problem. Vic, I think you probably have seen this happen throughout the industry as well.
I want to get the cheapest person that can crush it. I'm like, if you get cheap people give you cheap results. I want the best people that we can get. I want people that are like, I want to be like, dude, I can't afford you, but let me figure out a compensation package that's going to make it so you stay with me and never leave me because I can't afford you because you're so good already.
Spot on. And that's exactly it. I always I turn it back on the Rainmaker and say, if you were them, what would you do? And they always say, well, I'd leave the role. That's what they're going to do to you. So I think I'm a huge Warren Buffett / Charlie Munger fan, RIP. And he always talked about how incentives matter. So number 2 is the compensation model. There has to be something that rewards the ISA for doing the work. I think the other reason ISA models or the ISA role doesn't work is a lot of people try to fit it into a 9-to-5 job when they're hiring an individual ISA, and that shit is fictitious. It will never work. Half of the work you're going to do is going to be outside 9-to-5 work hours. It's going to be mornings. It's going to be nights. It's going to be weekends, and there's no breaking that. What it really comes down to is the ISA role is inconvenient, just like being an agent. So it's a production-based role. So a lot of people were trying to fit it into this box that it wasn't. They were trying to pay people poorly, doesn't work. And then the other big thing is I think they're rewarding the wrong behavior. A really good example is a lot of people tried paying ISAs on appointments. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I don't make money when I set an appointment. I make money as a business when a deal closes. So I actually think ISAs, in my definition, don't just set quality appointments for the agents, in-person, face-to-face quality appointments. They also hold the agent accountable to doing the right things after the appointment takes place.
Bingo, baby.
To make sure this is being checked, things are being noted, people are being followed up with. What most people were trying to do is they're trying to hire somebody, oftentimes overseas somewhere. And I'm not saying that that's bad. I think there's actually a lot of good that can be done in those things. Leads can be filtered. But an in-house ISA, the value that they bring is setting in-person appointments, holding people accountable. And that's just impossible for somebody in the Philippines to go and do on my team. That's just not going to happen.
And they can hear what's happening in real life. So they can hear how you talk. They can hear how your salesperson talks. They can hear that I had a big bullpen where my ISAs and salespeople sat. Everybody heard each other talking. So when because the setter or the ISA gets paid when the closer, the sales agent, closes the deals. Vice versa, the buyer's agent can only go on an appointment if the ISA does a good job. So if the ISA sets crap, then the buyer's agent's like, yo, bro. So the synchronicity starts to lock themselves in. So our compensation model on ISAs was you got paid an appointment, right? You got paid an hourly to show up. You got paid an appointment, right? But that had to be qualified. If they were starting to chop wood, then we would put in the qualifications. But normally after about 30 to 60 days of our training, they would stop chopping wood and they'll set good appointments, right? Because the buyer's agent's incentivized to teach him. So I taught one guy, he taught everybody else. But I spent hours with this guy, right? Like he was a mini Vikram because I would train him because leadership matters. And people are like, well, what if you train him and he leaves? I said, what if I don't train him and he sounds like shit to my people and my people think I suck because he sucks? Because that's the truth. That's why I don't have ISAs overseas, because I sell coaching and training for sales. And if my guy sounds crappy, what does the person on the other end think about me? They're going to think I'm crappy. So I spend 90 minutes a day with my people every single day. It's the first meeting of my day because I want them to sound good. And people are like, well, what if they leave? So great. They're going to be like, Vic's a man. And I'm going to give them an affiliate link and I'm still going to get business because they know they can't train like I can. But we trained it and we gave them the ISA got a percentage of the closing. So do you think they were motivated for good appointments? Of course. Hey, Vic, how do we do this? Hey, Vic, do you got time on Saturday? Hey, Vic, can I come hang out with you at your house on Sunday? Hey, Vic, can we come in? What time do you get at the office? 6 o'clock. I'll be there at 6:30. Is that cool? Sure. What do you want to talk about? I don't know. I just want to get better.
I'm a huge fan of the in-house ISA model, even though like we're an outsourced ISA model as well.
Yeah,
and I think that
because if they can't afford to train them, like if people don't know what to do, then you're the first step, and then they get better, then they bring them in house.
And they like what I think about in-house, and connecting with you, Robby, and connecting with Matt McKenzie, and kind of seeing everything that Matt's doing in his business, like in order to actually hold the agents accountable. I think a good in-house ISA can hold the agent accountable because they're directly tied to the transaction. So if the agent happens to say something stupid, the ISA is going to get pissed off at the fact that, hey, I set this appointment. You don't why do you not know how to, get this person through like contract to close?
They role play together.
That level of accountability. 100%.
It's even more than that. It's impossible for somebody that's external to hold an agent accountable. That's external. You can't go and do that. I can't go into Vic's company to hold them accountable if I don't have a relationship. That will never happen. It will never fly. And it's also then holding people accountable for their actions. That there are sometimes you create rules, aka consequences of you did this, you dropped the ball, we're skipping in the rotation.
Right.
And those processes are implemented by the ISAs. And I think I want to hit on one more thing real quick, Vic, before I forget. You talked about training, and it's really funny because I think everybody messes up training. I think a lot of people
because they were never trained properly, so they don't know the structure 100%. And status. So if you don't know how to train because you weren't trained and you were just a natural go-getter, which is that top 80%, right? Like I have one of my clients I work with, I'm like, bro, he's like, well, I'm just looking for people like me. I said, they're already hustling. They don't need you. You're looking for people that are 80%, 60%, 50% that want that additional, sorry, cut you off.
No, you're spot on. What it comes down to, Vic, is a lot of people then think training is having somebody sit in a room and watch them do it. And that's not training.
That's coaching and lecturing.
That's lecturing. It might be teaching, which is not bad, but it's only one piece of training. Step 1 in training is that they should watch you. Step 2 of training is now you flip it and you say, you do it. You teach it to me. Right. You do it. And I'm watching it. You go from teacher to observer status. Almost nobody does that. No. And then they go to step 3. Step 3 is, okay, now you can go and do Vic. Now you got it. You can go and do it. What everybody does is they do step 1, they jump to step 3, and they're like, but I trained them. Well, I thought they'd be good. No, that's stupid.
You know what most agents do is, what most agents do is they say, hey, I gave him a lead and he didn't close it. I gave him the opportunity. It was a warm lead. I said, how many times has he field trained with you? How many times has he shadowed with you? How many times did you guys get off of a call and you're like, hey, what? Well, no, I don't have time for that. Okay, so where's your online portal that they log into? I don't have an online portal. Okay, so then how do they know how to sound, right? You gave them a rope with a noose tied on it. You put it around their neck, and then you pushed them off of a chair, and you're like, pull yourself up. You gave them a loaded gun, and you said, don't kill yourself, but it was pointing at their face, and they've never seen a gun. I'm like, click. Like, you kill your people. But they're like, well, they're not motivated. I'm like, no. They showed up to training. You, Mr. Mrs. Team Leader, they showed up to training. They were in the office at 11:45 for the 12 o'clock. They were there 5 days a week. They did your Slack channel. You didn't have a process. And because of the lack of process, because and it's not your fault that you weren't trained. Our industry sucks, but it is your problem because you're killing people just like your team leader killed people. And if you want to be better, Oh, I wanted to answer the question that I gave you earlier, Cody.
Well, so we got to wrap up here.
Yeah. But I wanted to answer the question
Robby
about. Hold on.
Robby T has a hard stop in 4 minutes.
But I want to answer the question.
1 minute.
I know.
I'm going to give you 60
so
seconds.
why don't people that you coach and tell write frameworks, right? Why don't they do it when they know the benefit of it? Why don't they do it? Because it's what we went back to in the beginning. They think it strips them of their creativity, but when you have frameworks, it actually gives you the framework to play and be creative. It's the exact opposite, which is why your person now is able to have way better conversations.
Yeah.
100% agree with you. 100% agree. Robby, man, this was a great dialogue today. A ton of fun to jam about what agents should be doing, the thought process, mind mapping, all that good stuff. If somebody wants to reach out to you, they want to have a conversation with you, where can we direct them?
Yeah, so we'll keep it easy. Just reach out to me on Instagram. It's probably the easiest way to do it. At Real Robby T, REAL ROBBYT, Real Robby T. Funny story on that is I was actually Real Robby T before I even knew what real was. Real bro.
That's awesome.
Just crazy.
There you go. Real. Yep. Robby, I want to say thank you. Vic, man, thanks for sharing today as well. Super, super helpful. I think that anyone listening back to the podcast is going to get a ton of value. If this is your first time listening to the Our Agent podcast, the only ask that Vic and I have is go to iTunes, go to Spotify, leave us a review. We don't monetize these things. We're just trying to get the right information in front of the right people, in front of the right agents so that they can have their best year yet. So if you know any agents, you're listening to the podcast, share with people in your office, share with your colleagues. And I want to say
Cody,
thank you.
I got another ask in 2024 because our viewership is up. We are open to sponsorships and partnerships. And I'm not kidding. Cody laughs, but we've put in over a year and a half of really hard, dedicated work. We have a great audience. We have dedicated listeners. If you run like a CSU, if you run like a lead gen company, if you run something that you want to be on our platform, we're episode 230 and we're not stopping. So we are actually looking for some people to help us so we can take the podcast actually to the next level. And we'd like to have that conversation. So reach out to either Cody or myself.
Robby, thank you. Vic, thank you. And thank you for tuning into another episode of the RE Agent Podcast. We'll see you soon.